one of the things that certainly has occupied a lot of our attention over the last wee while has been the prosecution guidelines that were published on the 1st of October. As I said to you, the coverage of it has been incredibly poor from the mainstream media, and they are, in many ways, quite radical for the reasons that we've talked about. But as I said, if you go back to 2018, you'll find that Una Jagos was, in actual fact, telling everybody exactly what she was going to do, and it shouldn't have been any surprise who read her speeches that those prosecution guidelines were going to come out. The speech, as I said, was delivered to the New Zealand Maori Law Society 30th annual conference at Rotorua in October 2018, and the New Zealand Maori Law Society would have let that up and must have enjoyed that, and I would be interested to see what the response is. We've got Julia Spelman from the New Zealand Maori Law Society as a representative to talk about those prosecution guidelines and the reaction of her society to them, and she joins us now. Julia, thank you very much for joining us. I see that you are of Ngāti Hikairo descent. Where is that, Ngāti Hikairo?
Good morning, Michael. Ngāti Hikairo is based in Kawhia, Waikato.
So you're not part of Tainui, you're your own iwi?
Tainui is the waka that we came on.
Tainui's, yeah.
So, and Waikato and Ngāti Hikairo, are the iwi that I whakapapa to.
Oh, well, there you go.
I'm not sure if you've ever been to Kawhia, but it is a very...
I have not. I tell you what, there's probably the one place I haven't been, Kawhia. They say it's good fishing.
It is, very good.
Very good. Listen, you graduated with a first-class honours degree in law. You were admitted to the bar, 12 years ago, I see that. You've worked as a judge's clerk, so you've also worked on criminal justice issues overseas. You're now a defence lawyer. And you've also been chair of Just Speak, which is a youth-based criminal justice advocacy organisation, as well as your role with the New Zealand Maori Law Society. So you are well equipped to speak on this issue. First of all, looking at the prosecution guidelines, were they a surprise to you? Did you know that they were coming in the way in which they've been expressed by Una Jagos?
They weren't a surprise. The Crown Law Office has been working on this update for about 2 years, possibly a little longer, and they held a number of big meetings which were well represented by prosecutors from across the board, defence lawyers, members of different law groups, the Chief Victims Advisor, a really, really wide selection of people. So they had a couple of those meetings as they were working through what the changes and what the update should be. So in terms of the criminal justice sector, it won't be a surprise to anyone because I think almost everybody who's works in this area has been involved with the process. Okay.
Now, it did come as a surprise to ordinary New Zealanders, though, when they were released, because they do seem to make a particular issue of Maori offending and the way in which you should approach Maori offenders as distinct to any other ethnic group. Can you take me through that? Because it seems to me, as an observer, inherently racist to treat one ethnic group differently when you come to prosecute them compared to any other.
No, so it's not quite right. What the guidelines do is that they ask prosecutors to stop and think about decisions when one of the people involved, whether that's the complainant or the victim or the defendant, is a member of any group that is...
No, it doesn't say that. It says the word Maori. It says specifically Maori. It doesn't mention any other group except Maori.
It says when the person is Maori or a member of any other group that is disproportionately impacted by the criminal justice system. So what that means is that there are a number of groups who are disproportionately impacted by the justice system. That includes Maori. It also includes people with disabilities, young people, people who've been survivors of abuse in state care. And of course, you're reading from, I think, the first page of these, but it goes
I'm actually reading from the press release.
200. Okay, so not actually in the guidelines. Well, they're quite long. They're about 200 pages long.
No, I have read them. Don't worry, I've got there as well. So it took me a while, but I got right through to the end.
I think that's I think it is an important point for people to understand that what the guidelines are doing, which isn't a big change from what is currently done, is asking prosecutors to consider the individual circumstances of each case, whether that relates to the complainant, the victim, or the defendant, so that the prosecution can make an informed decision about the best way to respond to that case that's before them. So that is essentially what prosecutors are already or should already be doing now, and these guidelines are an update and a reminder to prosecutors to do that.
I don't agree with you. Can I put the press release to you of the 1st of October? And this is what Una Jagos put out, and this is how she said, because this is her idea of how you understand the 208 pages that follow. She says, research over many years has consistently found that Maori are significantly overrepresented in the criminal justice system at every age, including as victims, and we recognised at the start of the project that the discretion to prosecute may contribute to that. The guidelines expressly reference these disproportionate impacts and assist prosecutors by providing guidance about the matters to factor into their decisions. She's then grateful to the kaitiati and the kaimahi of Inia Tone for their wisdom, generosity and commitment. These guidelines are much better for their input. So she specifically, and it's the only ethnicity that she refers to, and the only group in the press release that accompanies it, and she is asking people to draw attention to that part of the prosecution guidelines. Now, that's new, surely.
Well, I mean, you're reading from a press release of what is a long and detailed document. So I think
a press release put out by the Solicitor General, Una Jagos.
Yeah, sure. And if you've got an issue with her particular press release, I'm sure you can take it up with her. But in terms of the actual guidelines, the document that we're talking about, it does go into great detail about the different groups that are overrepresented in the criminal justice system. And I think that we do want prosecutors to be thinking about those factors. We want prosecutors to be making the most informed decision about how to deal with the harm that has come before them in each particular case. That's really important if we want to actually be getting good outcomes from the justice system. And I don't think... Well,
why do we want to do that? Can you just take me through that then, Judo? Because again, that's something I simply don't understand. Surely if somebody does... Can I just give you a scenario? Yeah, but can I give you a scenario? You've got two people who commit the same crime, all right, with the same consequences for the same victims. Does it really matter whether they're Maori, disabled, or in abuse and care or anything when you come to prosecuting them for that particular crime? Isn't the time that you'd consider it maybe as extenuating circumstances or a factor when it comes to sentencing after that person has been convicted?
Well, courts today have a whole number of different ways that they deal with cases. So this is, again, something that is already the case, where prosecutors, and not just prosecutors, but defence lawyers and the court itself, will look at the case that's come before them and think about what is the best way to deal with it. There's one decision, you're right, about whether or not to prosecute. But these guidelines aren't just talking about that one decision. There's also looking at what forum is going to be best for this case. That's why there are particular courts set up to assist people going through them. If you're talking about somebody who has disabilities, whether that's on the complainant victim side or as a defendant, there are really significant factors that have to be taken into account to make sure that that person understands the process that's going on around them, can meaningfully participate in that, and ideally that what happens to them as part of that process, if we're talking about defendants, is going to have an impact and will mean that they don't come back before the court again. If we're talking about the aims of the criminal justice system overall, we don't want people to be coming back to court. And at the moment, our justice system isn't doing a very good job of that.
No, so that's not the justice system's job to work out. The justice system's job is surely to punish people or to give the appropriate sentence when they transgress against the laws of society as determined by Parliament. Surely it's the Corrections Department and the rehabilitation services outside of the justice system that have a role in trying to make sure that that person doesn't offend again.
Well, there's a lot of different factors going on. Different victims have different motivations in the justice system as well. Some complainants and some victims don't want to go through a formal prosecution process. They want other options. That's why the court has developed over the last 30 years or so different options that can cater to different needs. We can't assume that all complainants and all victims are the same. They have different needs and different interests as well. All these guidelines are doing is trying to say we need to stop and consider the individual circumstances.